Start. So good afternoon, I'm Christina Kassar. I'm a senior product manager. I'll go into a bit of an introduction about what I do now and what I've been doing. But as the slide here says, we're going to be covering strategic storytelling. So this isn't just a nice to have skill, but it's really critical, especially in leadership roles or as we're dealing with leaders and trying to convey our messaging and getting buy-in. It's really, really important. Um, I'm going to do a quick intro about me. So I'm a senior product manager at Liberty Global. So if you don't know much about the company, we basically deal in telco, connectivity, and entertainment. I'm in the Liberty Tech team covering entertainment products across 5 European markets. So that's a lot of stakeholders I have to deal with, and our products reach over 10 million customers. I've been working in product for a while, so across Sky and Virgin Media O2, Vodafone as well previously. And throughout my career, I've had to work on kind of discovery and strategy and getting buy-in across different markets. So when you are working with different stakeholders, typically they all speak different languages, they all care about different things. And early on in my career, I realized that just presenting logic and data and insights isn't enough. But when you kind of use a storytelling method to convey your message, then usually it's easier to get people to connect with you. And today I'm going to take you through one specific framework that is tried and tested that usually really helps with structuring your thinking when you are trying to build your story. Maybe some of you have already come across it, but we're going to kind of talk through it, how you can use it, and hopefully that'll help some of the people on this call. If you do have questions along the way, you can type them in the chat, and Kevin, you feel free to kind of stop me and I can take any questions along the way. And as humans, we love stories. It's usually the easiest way to kind of get people to connect with you. If I tell you, usage has gone down by 5%, well and good. But then if I tell you, our customers opened the app, they got really frustrated, they couldn't find what they wanted to watch, they were, lost for time, so they just, closed the app and moved on to something else. That kind of story is conveying my message, and it's easy for you to understand the urgency of why we need to act on something. So rephrasing the way we're saying something to kind of build that trust, help people remember, to help people actually stay engaged, especially when you're dealing with leaders, it really makes your message stick. This particular session I planned for product managers, but I know we have a lot of people working in different teams, and I think the kind of all of this conveys to your teams as well. So sometimes as ICs, as individual contributors who are getting people together, we have a lot of responsibility, but not the authority to make decisions ourselves. Sometimes we need approval from other people. We need to get people on the same page, and we need to lead and influence without having much direct control. And the problem is if we are just handing out requirements or JIRA tickets and roadmaps, we're not really getting people, we're not giving people the reason to get behind something that, we want to do or need. So storytelling really helps bridge that gap. I don't know if there are any people working in product here. I don't think we do. But as product managers or within product management, we basically need to influence all of the time, throughout your whole role, whether you're doing discovery, whether you're brainstorming sessions, if you need buy-in, you need to secure resource, you need to influence along all the different kind of your whole skill set and your whole role. You kind of need to influence people along the way. So this is why storytelling kind of helps you across your day-to-day. So typical updates. So I had some people who kind of said, I'm landing the facts, but it's really not kind of getting the message across. And that's why, because sometimes our typical updates are, we had low engagement, our users dropped by 5%, we want to do this and that, we want to run a campaign, we want to optimize the journey. It doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but it doesn't really get people to engage, especially when you have limited time to get your message across. Leading with something like this generally doesn't get you the type of emotional engagement that you would want. So what's wrong with kind of that? It's just, it has big data, there's a lot of buzzwords, and the kind of the most important thing is that it's missing that human story. There's no really concrete plan which ties to the human element, and this is what we need to solve for with storytelling. Again, I don't really need to kind of go through all of this, but if we can drive the emotion to make the ideas more memorable, then we can really progress at what we need to tell and tell it in a very good way. So how many people here are across the why, what, how method? Have you heard of it before? Has anyone heard of this before? It's a tried and tested method. It's part of product strategy, really. If you're trying to convey a strategy, the way you build the story is by utilizing this framework. So looking at the why, so the purpose, the vision, and the problem, and the what are we solving for? What is the solution? How are we going to solve it? And finally, kind of landing with the how are we going to implement it? And in my role, I use this framework quite a lot when I'm building stories for any stakeholder, really. We'll tap into how you convey the message to different stakeholders later. But basically, using this framework as a way to lay out your story usually is quite effective. And so just kind of going into that in more detail. When we're looking at the why, we start with the problem. And specifically, if we can look at the customer and who we're dealing with, or the particular stakeholder and the problem that we're having, and not leading with the data itself. And I'll give you a bit of an example later, but leading with the story, describing the struggle and building the empathy around the struggle that the user is having, and then backing that up with the data first. So rather than starting with a percentage with the insight point, we start with we lead with the problem that we are seeing first. The what, then we get into the what. So clearly explaining the kind of the high level solution, focusing on the proposal itself, and then outlining a high level plan of implementation and what will drive success. That will kind of really help us structure and lay out the storyline and how we deliver it. Do we have any questions yet, Kevin, or shall I go on?
We're all good, it seems. Thanks, Christina.
Great. And so looking into a real world example here. So previously, we just had a couple of insights, some data points, a couple of bullets. But if we lead with the why, what, how, so we're starting off first with the problem that the particular stakeholder is having. So a real world example here is a customer stopped using our app. She said she loved it first when she signed up, but then found it really difficult to find the content that she was interested in. So a problem that we have in the space I work in, for instance, we have apps with content. We were not displaying content in the right way. It wasn't personalized when we were surfacing content. So customers were getting really frustrated because they're spending 5 to 10 minutes trying to find something to watch with their family or with their kids. If we just kind of said, 10% of customers are dropping off, we don't really understand the why they're dropping off. We're not conveying that message. It just makes it very difficult for senior stakeholders to buy in to why they should fund us for a specific feature, for instance. So it's really important that we dig deep into why the specific stakeholder is having a problem. So leading with, this is frustrating for our customers. They are moving away from the app, for instance. They're not finding anything they're interested in. And then we can back that up with the data. So when we look at the data, we spotted a pattern. Daily active users have actually dropped. And then we can move on to the solution itself. So we want to make it easier for customers to discover content so that they have a reason to come back. That will lead us on to the how. So this is why we're doing X, Y, and Z. We are introducing a what's new section. We are going to have push notifications so that the customers know that new content is released, for instance, so that they can get interested and then they get back into the app. And it's almost like a cycle of here's the problem, here is what we want to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And laying out in that way, it can make it really easy to get engineers on board, developers on board, to get senior stakeholders to sign on, and just kind of keeping that in mind whenever we're trying to convey anything, leading with the problem first. And it's really important that when we are utilizing this framework, we know what audience we are talking to. We need to engage different people's emotions. They will have different things that they care about. We need to simplify the message to make sure that it is in line with what they are wanting to achieve. And then we filter out any unnecessary noise. And that is how we make it all memorable, if we tie it back to what they need. So how do we tailor stories to the right audience? So it's important that we understand who is in the right room, who we're delivering the story to. How do we hope to influence them? So what do we want them to feel? What do we need them to do? Do we need them to approve, give us budget? Do we want to sunset anything? And what ultimately will drive them? So different people, different stakeholders will have different needs. This is when stakeholder mapping comes into effect, really kind of thinking about what you need from them, what role they need to play. And so kind of really looking at the needs of your different audiences. If we map out the different kind of stakeholders that you're dealing with, different people will have different motivations. This is just an example, very high level. You will be dealing with different teams yourself. So it's kind of very important to have a think about what stakeholders do I deal with and what do they usually care about. So if we have a look at this slide, for instance, typically I work with executives and leaderships quite a lot, where we need to present the bigger picture to them. They really won't care about the high-level technical specifications. They usually only care about the strategy, the strategic impact, the return on investment. So it's really important that you tailor your language to speak in return on investment and market share and growth and competitive advantage. So when you're laying out your what, the why, what, and the how, you kind of focus on what they are looking to achieve themselves first, and you tie it back to them. Same with engineers and developers. They will be thinking about how they build a solution for you, how we're going to spec out requirements. So with them, it's really important that we kind of have more technical details behind it, especially when it comes to the how we're going to do it. Commercial teams, on the other hand, they're going to be looking at unique selling propositions and revenue pipelines. So really kind of having maybe a KPI, financial KPI related element behind your story. And then with marketing, we also need to influence them on what is the communication strategy for customers going to be, what material should we use. So again, having a think about the market fit, the brand messaging, lead generation, for instance, conversion rates, all tied into the how we're going to do it. And it's not so easy to kind of determine what stakeholders need out of this. So I think we're all kind of very good at building rapport and having informal chats with the teams, especially if we're starting out in roles, is developing that relationship and seeing from their perspective what objectives they have and being genuinely interested in their own feedback and what they need. And doing your homework, so know your own role, what KPIs you need to deliver and past priorities you've had. And even asking kind of direct questions to the people that you're working with. So we've heard about working with executive leadership in some roles or having to present with boards. What is the ultimate priority that these teams have? And listening quite a lot and kind of taking notes to make sure that you're picking up on themes and concerns. And then we're spotting emotional drivers out of all of this. So you will hear things like, oh, we need to save costs on this, or we need to improve conversion. And you kind of take that all away as part of building your strategy and getting to the what and the how. I've mentioned stakeholder mapping before, so this is quite a good exercise to do, especially as we're starting out on projects. So we can share a framework on how you map stakeholders, but sometimes for myself, I just take notes, for instance, on who needs to be involved, what kind of stake they have in the project, how involved they need to be. If I present to them, what would they be mostly interested in, and always keeping that on top of mind when you have these particular projects. And then finally, reflection as well kind of helps a lot, especially when you're presenting and getting feedback, so that you're often iterating on your storyline and how you present it to different people. And there's various tools that you can use. Specifically, I tend to prefer using PowerPoint. I think it's the most useful when you are conveying stories. And there's Canva as well, which is quite visual. But I think it has the most power when you are presenting something, and especially when you need to lay on visual elements or graphs or anything like that. I think PowerPoint is the most useful tool. There are good and bad ways to use PowerPoint. Usually we want to keep it quite brief. We use titles to guide the narrative. I'll give you an example of how you can do this. Using high quality visuals, whether that's images or even graphs, to further convey your message, and that you make sure that it kind of flows and that you have a story that flows throughout the different slides. So this is an example, for instance, of something you can present. It's very high level. We are leading the title, it's kind of leading the storyline. So customers are struggling to find content they love on our app, rather than kind of a title which says daily active users are decreasing, for instance, is trying to tie out that emotional element to the title itself. And then we can kind of lead with the why. So customers are frustrated by the time it takes them to find something to watch on our app. Busy customers need time-efficient ways to find content they love. So again, we're talking about our customer, their daily lives, and you can quickly kind of relate to what the customer is feeling. I too lead a busy life. I too don't have time to kind of spend 10 minutes to find something to watch in the evening, for instance, with my partner. So that kind of already conveys that emotional element. And then we can back that up by the data. Because of this, daily active usage has dropped by X%. We can use graphs, for instance, as well to convey the message, especially if it's with executive leaders or with people who would want, who have kind of a mission to drive conversion and engagement. So we can use graphs as well. And then how we're going to do it is conveyed at the bottom. So in Q4, we will do X, Y, and Z to tackle this problem and to solve the customer's problem. Useful tips when writing your storyline. I typically like to write it down first. So have a think about, if you use the framework, how am I going to lay out the story itself? Just writing it down, leading with the titles. What are my titles going to say? If we are using things like PowerPoint, you could even do a skeleton deck, writing down your titles at the top, how it's going to flow before you start building the content itself. Starting with the why, we've already covered this quite a lot, but always thinking about the problem, the stakeholder problem, how are we going to solve for this? But first, just kind of digging into the problem itself. Using a hook at the start usually gets attention quite a bit. So you could start with a hook like, X% of our customers would no longer use our app because it's taking them so long, and leading with that as a start to your storyline. Connecting the problem to the impact and the solution makes the journey quite clear and logical. We've already covered tailoring to the right audience, so highlighting most what matters to them, bolding kind of the text that mostly covers their objectives. And then blending emotion and data, so making sure that people care, and we're proving it with the data, so backing with data. And ending with a clear ask. So we have taken them through the story. What do we now need from them? Do we need sign-off? Do we need budget? Are we asking them to agree so we can progress? So making sure that throughout your storyline, at the end, we have a clear ask to the stakeholder that we're presenting to. Apart from the what, why, and how, there are many useful frameworks that you can use. And after this, I can send you a link to all of these. But basically, there's the situation, complication, question, and answer, which is very kind of similar to the framework we've just discussed. And following that to build your story, we have the problem, solution, benefit, which shows the pain point of the particular stakeholder, the fix, and the value you're going to create. Again, very, very similar to what we've just discussed. We have the hero's journey, which is usually used in kind of a product management, but in product management terms, where you have a particular hero who's your particular customer who's facing a challenge, and then how our product team and how our product is going to help these customers overcome the issue, the challenge that they have. We also have jobs to be done. So jobs to be done typically kind of outlines a particular customer, what job they want to do with the product that you have for them, and what solution our product needs to solve for. So what solution are we giving them for the problem that they have? All of these frameworks can be adapted, but usually why, what, how is quite an easy, simple one to adapt to a storyline. I've also kind of suggested Anne-Marie Clifton's talk at Product School. It's quite interesting in the way that she outlines storytelling. I would suggest that after this, you kind of have a look at it. It's a very different way. She doesn't really talk a lot about frameworks, but she basically tells a story herself, and she kind of shows how storytelling can really motivate and tap into that human element. It's really interesting. So I would suggest you have a look after this. That's everything I had for today, Kevin. I don't know if we want to take any questions, if there are any questions around how you use particular techniques or anything that wasn't covered as part of this.
Yeah, so question to the room, really. There's nothing in the chat at the moment. People are welcome to type in the chat or come off mute and speak. But does anybody have any questions for Christina?
Or even maybe in your particular role, if this was quite a product-led presentation maybe, but in your role, do you have any questions on you don't see that maybe you can apply this particular framework, or are there questions on how you could apply it? Or if you've used it before?
Ruth.
I'm going to keep my camera off because it's gone a bit weird and like was not showing me properly. But it was a question just around, I do work in product. This is quite interesting for me. I'm a product researcher, so I'm not actually really involved in like the regular kind of product sprint cycles, but I do my kind of research separately. And my question was around like that kind of singular sort of user experience story. So you're saying our user used an app and she had this experience. I think like what I've learned when I'm presenting like research to stakeholders is that they like to hear numbers, and I like to hear the more kind of emotive story, and I feel like that was really effective, and obviously is what strategic storytelling is aiming at. How do we kind of convince our stakeholders that while we're just describing one person's experience, it maybe might scale up to a larger percentage of our audience?
It's striking the balance, right, between kind of leading with the emotional problem that the customer has and then backing that up with the data. When we are presenting from our end, and I'm kind of talking about a problem, it's not going to be just applicable to one customer. We run research, and it's going to affect a large. We can hear the people in your behind you. I'll just use it. Sorry. So typically we would have personas who apply to a large segment of our customers, and you need to kind of make sure that that is conveyed. So backing up with the data, but then I believe that leading with the emotional problems that customers have and that we're solving for is the most important thing. If we're not solving for that, then our customers will not be using the product. So for senior exec, explaining that and kind of changing the way the thinking is done, while still using that element of insight and balancing that out, I think is the best framework to apply when we are making product decisions.
Thank you.
Lindsay, your hand's up.
Actually, I think it was quite a similar question in that to me, the storytelling tells a story. That's what grabs the eye, gets the engagement. That's why I'm here, to learn how to do that. Having come from the background where, you know, a percentage speaks more words, you know, than anything else. So I'm always struggling with that balance of, I might write a really detailed document, could be 20 pages, and then that goes down to 10 for the senior leadership team. And then I've got 3 minutes at the board. So I've got to get that into, you know, 4 or 5 slides. And I think it was helpful when you showed that, you know, who needs to know what.
Yes,
And,
definitely.
yeah.
I coming from
Just
quite
getting that balance. Sorry.
That's right. No, it's absolutely fine. I come from quite a technical background, and Liberty Global was kind of known for being quite technical, lots of requirements, lots of words. Recently, in the last year or so, we've decided to become more customer-led because we no longer are in a space where we differentiate. There's a lot of competitors in the space, and if we don't have that emotional element to engage customers, then we'll just lose customers left, right, and center. So we have to change our way of thinking, and it starts small. And just having, you said you write kind of loads of documents, just have an area which kind of talks about the customer problem or the need, what you're solving for, and starting with that. And then if there is, you know, use and keeping the technical element behind it, then great. But it's just trying to change the way we kind of think and work, and always having a small space for the customer problem. We kind of started using that in Jira as well, where we write our requirements. So typically we used to lay out, this is what we're doing, all our requirements. We now have an area which says, this is what we're solving for. You know, a customer it isn't engaging with our content because it's not personalized enough, and this is why we need to solve for this. And it's really helped our engineers as well kind of buy into why we need to do something, and it just doesn't become a one requirement which sits on a stack. So just kind of changing the way we work slowly, and doesn't need to be overnight, but kind of finding gaps where we can start thinking about the problem first.
I love that. I love you're putting it into your Jira tickets. I've just looked at one this morning. I'm standing in for our program manager who's on holes, and I'm saying, well, what's it for? I understand technically what you're telling me, but what problem are we solving?
And when Jira tickets are just kind of passed around left, right, and center to different people,
Yes,
unless you do have a couple of bullets as, you know, why we're solving for, you know, so some people might not get it. We might build the wrong solution, and then in the end, it's not what the customer actually wanted. So it ends up not being used.
Very, very true. Yeah, thank you. That's really powerful.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to ask if I think there was someone else that had their hand up, but
Fern did, but she said in the chat that also answers her question. You, Christina, suggested what I was going to ask the room effectively, because your presentation was very much around the product world and, you know, either a feature or a product development, or and that customer experience of that you're feeding back. But I think the methodology applies to all situations, all scenarios. You could be presenting board strategy, you could be presenting on project milestones, and still use that methodology to tell a story and like I say, make it more emotive and bring it to life. But I just wondered if anybody in the room had any different use cases, any scenarios that they were experiencing where they were looking to use storytelling that they feel didn't fit that at the moment, that we could maybe discuss.
And sometimes, just like to add, it's just simple techniques for any role, doesn't need to be a product role, but simple techniques like if you are presenting, it's using, sometimes we have like space in the titles where you could just, instead of saying, I don't know, stats for 2024, you could relay that message, which is more emotive in the title itself, just so, you know, you don't have to use the whole space to lay out a story, but it's kind of small ways to tweak existing documentation or tools to use the kind of the how and apply that framework to the everyday to your documentation or slideware. I think people are getting because they're hungry.
Very few people say thank you is really, really helpful, Paul.
I've got another one. I got another question that because I'm enjoying the comment. I'm enjoying this a lot, Christina. That's why. So I tried to, when we're looking at user requirements, try to bring in a process of what's the problem, asking the business what's the problem, and got a lot of feedback there, pushback. They didn't like it. They said, we haven't got a problem. We just want to build something this way. You know, we want to build something. And I'm saying, can you tell me why? Yeah, because we need it. When I tried to frame it as, can you tell me what your problem is? And then I'll work out how to solve it. What I'm finding a lot is that they want to do the solution and they can't because that's not their role. You know, they are clinicians or statisticians or something, and we're the technologists in my department. And when I ask them to define a problem, they do struggle with that.
I think
I'm not sure if that's because it's a negative word or they don't get it.
A problem with the process itself. I think building just for the sake of building isn't really great. I think someone needs to raise a conversation around why you're not changing the process in terms of how you're building things, because if we are just building for the sake of it and it's quite top down, then we are investing money in things that ultimately might not make sense and we're working backwards. So if we had the right processes in place, if we had the research to back up why we had to do something, even asking customers, you know, what problems do you need to solve? Because that's the way we're going to build the solution. So I don't know if there's a conversation to be had with your leadership teams or who is making these decisions to start with the stakeholder customer first and who you're solving for. And that will help you as well with building the story.
I think I agree with what you said there, Lindsay, about it being a negative terminology, and maybe if you phrased it as what we're trying to achieve, and then be prepared to snap back with it. If they say, I don't have a problem, I'd kind of say, well, why do we need to change anything then? Like, if they're asking for a change, they're asking for a solution, there has to be a problem, doesn't there? But I don't think they like the word problem. So I'd frame it as, you know, what's the end goal? Where are we trying to get to? You know, let's take your idea, but let's look at all the solutions and see, is this the best one? Is there a way we can actually do something better for you than what you proposed?
Just to give you an example of how we do it over here and how the kind of process flows, is we start off with discovery phase first, which is basically talking to customers or care advisors or just getting as much insight as possible to understand what we need to build. But we pull together all that insight, like these are the problems our customers are having, these are what our competitors are doing, and a macro kind of industry analysis as well, getting people in the room to then understand the problem, how can we solve it, but we never build a solution. Even our JIRA tickets are all centered around the why and the how, the why and the what, sorry, and then it goes to engineers to think, how can we build? What can we build to solve it? It doesn't start with the build first.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you. I love that you're putting it into the JIRA tickets.
Erica, your hand's up.
I was just going to feed into this conversation because we're going through the same thing. And Lindsay, just the word problem. So challenge areas is always good. So if you work with scientists and statisticians, well, I'm a statistician in my past life, but we're looking at building the data strategy at the moment and putting an implementation plan in. And it was really helpful. It's almost like a workshop style where we've got the full data life cycle, a diagram of it from the very source of the data and the curation of the data all the way through managing it, and then utilizing and then archiving or disposal, and then asking them to put stickies or on that level of the life cycle of where they have the challenges and what issues they are currently experiencing, and then that helps that conversation, and then to try and pose it into like a user story, and then that's your problem statement really. That's what we're finding anyway, and it really helps to get the conversation, and it only takes one or two to start talking and sharing, and then that brings the other ones on as well. But I think they're on the defensive, and it's almost like when you say, you know, the problem, it's, as you say, it's a negative connotation. It gets on the back foot. So it's trying to work with them in their language as well. Yeah, I don't know if that helps or not, but
it helps a lot. Getting the language right is the key. I think it's one of the keys, one of the many keys, you know.
Yeah, when we talk about metrics that matter for them, I think for us, when we started realizing that we're launching things that aren't even being used, so engagement had to be one of the kind of the key metrics. So showing that we launched this, we wanted people to use it, but you know, no one's using it. We have less than 0.1% of our base actually using the feature. They realize we're wasting money investing things that aren't right. So we started taking prioritization more seriously and looking into actually solving for things that matter.
Yeah. I need to go. I'm so sorry, Christina.
It's
absolutely,
okay, Lindsay.
you know, loads of actionable stuff, and also so easy to understand. I can actually take that away and do it. Thank you.
Thank you
and
so
I'm going
much.
I'm going to share it at my next team meeting as well.
Thank you so much. And if you need me, please add me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to help with any further questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who? Sorry. Can I ask one more question?
I was going to say, Lindsay, I will have the recording of this straight away. But it might take me a while because I'm on holiday to upload it we host things on YouTube, but I can send you, as soon as it's live, I can send you the link so you can share it with your team if you want to.
Oh, thanks. My team are all on holiday. Who was it just said they're doing their data journey?
Erica, she's dropped off now, but I can introduce you to her if you want to.
Yeah, I really want to talk to her because one of my data managers is doing exactly the same for us. Shall I put it in the chat?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Erica.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I say, Erica's just left, but I can introduce you on LinkedIn after this.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks again. Bye. Sorry to go.
You.
Sorry to go. Bye.
Bye.
No problem. But well, Christina, I think Lindsay summed it up there. I'm sure everybody else will want to say thank you very much for the time.
You're welcome.
Really easy to understand, really helpful.
Thank you so much. I'll send you the deck of it so you can upload it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Perfect.
Thanks, Christina. It was really good.
you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye.